Sure.
We can see her.
Can you see me?
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Atalla, and I'm so excited to be here today talking about mental health in the legal field. I've titled the presentation Beyond the Billable Hour. Hopefully, I can talk about some tangible strategies that can help everyone reclaim their mental health in legal practice. And I'll give a little bit more of a introduction to myself. So, who am I? I'm Dr. Atalla. I'm actually a health psychologist by training, meaning that my default way of understanding health and wellness really is through a mind-body perspective. One of the reasons I love health psychology is because I'm often introduced to patients through their physicians. So I get access to this whole subset of patients that would have never entered my office otherwise. And it was actually while working in cardiac rehab that I unintentionally started specializing in working with attorneys. So after having a success with a very vocal attorney who spoke to my supervisor let the medical team know that if there were any other attorneys that came through their doors, to send them my way. So from cardiac rehab and also the medical practice is how this all started to develop. My connection to Patrick, who gave an amazing talk this morning, is what brought me to the room today. But my connection to law has been around since childhood. My brother's an attorney, countless cousins, my uncle, my ex-husband. And I really think that knowing them personally is what's really helped me understand the unique pressures that lawyers face, but also their worldview and even how they speak. Corey or anyone else, any questions before I get started with the presentation? All right. So, why are you here? Why should you care about what I have to say? If I've learned one thing about attorneys is that you all have incredibly busy lives. There are so many things that you could be doing with the 55 minutes right now. So, why spend it listening to me? If we want to generalize the stats to the people that are in this room, then 1 in 4 of you are suspected to experience depression. 1 in 5 of you will have anxiety and meet criteria for problematic drinking. So while I love statistics and they really help me make my case, my passion for working with attorneys goes far beyond that. What really lights me up is working with individuals that are passionate and lit up by their careers. I really think that the world would actually be a much better place if everyone was in a career that they were driven and passionate about. But that also makes me very protective of the people that are. And the way my protectiveness expresses itself is that I want to ensure that driven and passionate people can really have sustainable ways to stay in the field that they're working in. And not only does your expertise matter, but now more than ever, especially in our political environment, we really need you here for the long haul. So what's on the roadmap for today? I'm going to start by talking about the double-edged sword of excellence. I'll go into mental health in the context of what you do, the world we're living in. I want to talk about the power of self-compassion. I can't see any of you on the screen, but I expect some pushback and eye rolls. It's probably nothing that I haven't already heard, so very excited for that. There's a lot of fluff about self-care and what to do and how to implement it, so I want to help us get through all the fluff and really develop a performance protocol. Since I am a health psychologist, my trifecta is around sleep, nutrition, and movement. And then I'll wrap up about talking about when stress becomes a signal that you might need a little bit more assistance. And I will leave us all with some strategies that we could start to try as soon as tonight. So we can start with the double-edged sword of excellence. I'm just seeing now that this is. So I actually love that mental health is starting to become more mainstream. I can tolerate that a lot more patients are coming into my office telling me about their trauma bonding or their narcissistic partners. But something that I worry about is that the messaging that's being broadcast over TikTok and other media outlets is actually starting to over pathologize what we would think of as healthy or normal. I also think it misses nuance. There isn't one quality that anyone can name or behavior that's 100% bad. And that's because as humans, we're actually pretty intelligent beings. So if something was 100% bad, we simply wouldn't do it anymore. So we can also think about our strengths in that way too. Our greatest strengths also have a shadow side. So I've put together some common strengths that I see in my work with attorneys and some shadow aspects for all of you to be aware of. I'll start with perseverance. Every attorney I've worked with has told me countless stories about pushing through exhaustion, not listening to their bodies, and just really getting the task done. Now, I just mentioned that as humans, we're intelligent beings. And the hard part here is that we're often reinforced for doing just that. So you push through and you won the case. You push through and you get recognition from your boss, or maybe that led to a promotion. And that creates this narrative that pushing through is what leads to your success. Now, the danger here, though, is that pushing through those initial warning signs are warning signs that are still in their mild state. They're still quiet. They're still not screaming or tantruming. But the more we push through those warning signs, those warnings become a little bit harder to ignore, oftentimes impossible. I mentioned I worked in cardiac rehab. Many of those attorneys had warning signs that suddenly became impossible to ignore. So it's really about listening to your body. Maybe sometimes you do have to, for survival or for that acute short moment, ignore what your body's telling you. But usually those warning signs are like little children that tantrum, and they're just going to get louder and louder until you have to pay attention. Okay, the second one might sound a little confusing, and this one is arguing both sides. You may be wondering, what does this have to do with anything, let alone what does this have to do with mental health? So our gold standard approach for treating depression and anxiety and mental health is something that's called cognitive behavioral therapy. Part of cognitive behavioral therapy is this exercise that's called a thought record. So in this thought record, you write down some irrational thought or belief that you're having, and then you gather evidence to support and evidence to go against. In most people, ultimately, at the end of this exercise, they're able to come up with a more balanced perspective about that irrational thought or feeling that they started with. That is, except for my attorneys. I will never forget the day, and thankfully, I was still in training when I was doing this with an attorney for the first time. And he came up with the most compelling evidence to support the irrational thought and feeling or belief that he was having. And I'll never forget running into my supervisor's office who, you know, preached CBT till the cows came home and telling them, hey, I found a hole in this strategy. It's not working, and it just didn't work with the attorney I did it with. Thankfully, we're now in this era of personalized medicine and personalized care. And thankfully, I was still under supervision. So my supervisor helped me really critically think through the other tools, the other interventions we have in our tool belt. And ultimately, she enabled me to switch to what's called an acceptance-based approach. So I took arguing off the table. I dropped the rope with the attorney and we switched to a more acceptance-based perspective. But if you are pursuing therapy and you do something like CBT, I just want that to be on your radar. The third is emotional investment. Now, emotional investment is interesting because in the age of social media and cryptocurrencies, if you were an attorney purely for the prestige and the income, nowadays there are a lot easier ways to obtain prestige and income. So most of the time, at least when you start, there is a significant deal of emotional investment that goes in. There's something that sparks that light to study for the LSAT, to apply to law school, to get that first job that you're going to get. Maybe you take the lower paying job because you're so passionate about what you do and everything seems so values aligned. But the difficulty here is all of those traits that get you into that emotionally driven space also puts you at really high risk for compassion fatigue and overall burnout. So it's almost like that helper inside you is what makes you vulnerable without the right strategies to eventually having all out fatigue or burning out completely. And sorry, I meshed two topics into one there. But the last thing I want to say about the achievement orientation, which also goes to the emotional investment. Achievement orientation, what I've seen with working with attorneys, it's a goalpost that never stops moving. So it's always, I'll listen to Dr. Atalla after X, after this case is done, after trial's done, after I get this client what it is that they need. And once they get that client what they need, or they win the case, or they finish the brief, instead of really savoring that moment and celebrating, the immediate reaction is to just move the goalpost. And so what this does is it really takes us out of experiencing any joy. We're almost starving ourselves of any satisfaction that we have from our accomplishments. And it really is hard to keep up with when you're always continuously pushing something down the line. It never gives you that opportunity to look at the viewpoint. I always compare it to if you're hiking up a mountain, sure, that peak is what you're aiming towards, but usually there's a viewpoint. And I really encourage everyone to notice the viewpoints in life, to step out, to look at how far they've come, and really use that as the fuel that they need to continue to move forward. So that was a concise slide, but a lot of me talking. So if you need a too long, don't read or too long, don't listen version of this, um, I really want you to acknowledge that your superpowers are really what I want to hone in on and really become protective of and make sure that the shadow side of things doesn't take you out of the game. So let's put mental health in the context of your work. The legal field is adversarial by design. It's high stakes, it's emotionally complex. Layer on political pressures, long hours, moral gray zones, and it's really easy to see how all the stress just continues to accumulate. For those of you practicing in DUI, immigration, or other criminal law, the emotional weight can be that much heavier. And you often carry the moral burden or outcomes that are deeply human and sometimes just straight up unfair. So you're showing up, you're getting things done. You look fantastic from the outside. Sure, you're high functioning, but my question is, and my prompt to you is, does that mean that you're well functioning? My passion for working with high functioning individuals stems from a realization that those individuals don't always get the attention that they need. They're often overlooked by family, by friends, by community. I'll hear comments like, what do they have to be worried about? They're killing it at work. Or how can you tell me they're struggling? I just saw the latest vacation they took on Instagram or on Facebook. And I'll admit, I've officially become that weirdo because when I see someone in my circle that's killing it, sure, I want to celebrate them, but also my radar goes up and I want to make sure that they're also killing it on the inside as well. All right, self-compassion. And I warned you all, I came prepared here. I'm very well versed on on the literature here and all the comeback that I've heard in my work with attorneys and all the other achievement-oriented individuals. So I expect the skepticism. I know that self-compassion can sound like being soft or being indulgent, or also what I've heard is kind of, I don't let myself off the hook. But the science is really on my side here, and I'm really grateful for that. Because again, trust me, I've heard it all. Now, there are a lot of myths that get perpetuated, and there maybe are a lot of experiences. Maybe you had harsh caregivers, or you had a harsh coach, or you're harsh to yourself, and you believe that that harshness is really what's needed to keep yourself on the hook and to perpetuate your motivation. The research actually shows the exact opposite here. So that critique actually sparks feelings of shame. And when we're shameful, what we tend to do is avoid. And my favorite quote about avoidance, what we resist persists. Sorry, I just messed up my favorite quote. So oftentimes what we resist not only persists, but it comes back with vengeance. So as far as compassion goes for letting you off the hook, here's why it's actually the exact opposite. When we meet our mistakes with curiosity and with care, we're actually more willing to engage honestly. So compassion isn't about lowering the bar at all. It's actually about heightening the bar, making us all feel a little bit more accountable and a lot less avoidant. If I haven't told you yet, I would love to do a thought exercise with all of you. So because I have a lot of high achievers on the line here, I know that I also probably have a lot of individuals with a very loud critical voice. So this first part should be easy. I want you to think about a recent mistake that you made. This could be something small, something big, maybe a meeting you missed or a trial that didn't go your way, or maybe just simply not showing up in the way that you wanted to. Now, give you a second for that mistake to really come to mind. And you can do this two ways. If you want it to be an imaginary person, you can have two people on your shoulder. Or if you're someone that needs something a little bit more real and tangible, I want you to think about walking into a room to tell this mistake to two different people. The first person is someone that is super judgmental, someone who tends to be harsh and critical. Maybe a boss comes to mind, or a coworker, or even a friend or a partner. What do you expect their reaction to be? And how does it feel for you? But also, what's your instinct? Is your instinct to pour it all out and to open up more? Or is your instinct with that person to shut down and hide? Maybe you want to curl up in a ball and get out of that room as far as you can. Okay. So that's the critic. You're walking in to tell this mistake, this really embarrassing thing to the critic. Now I want you to think about a separate room or a separate shoulder, however you're doing this. And that's someone that can be thought of more as a coach. So same mistake, but now you're going to tell it to someone that doesn't judge. Someone who's genuinely curious, who listens really to understand. And again, a key caveat here, understanding is not justifying. Understanding why someone did something doesn't mean that we're making it right or wrong. That's a later judgment. We just want to understand how it came to be. So with that, how do you feel in that presence? What response do you feel like is possible there? So the key takeaway here is that compassion really is not about coddling. It's about creating the conditions for honesty, for accountability, and for growth. Shame makes us defensive. It makes us shut down. It makes us not want to propel forward. But compassion really opens the door to make real, authentic change. And it's really something that can help us move forward. All right, so I look forward to hearing questions and comments at the end of our presentation about that. Next, I want to go into the performance protocol. Let's be honest, all of you have probably tuned out the term self-care at this point, and I get it. Bubble baths and journaling are not cutting it when you've had 2 all-nighters in the last week. So instead, I want to spend today talking about some real tangible strategies that can be used to create an individualized, what I call, performance protocol. These are foundational habits that allow your brain and body to really function under pressure. And again, like I said, because I'm a health psychologist, I focused on that trifecta of sleep, physical activity, and nutrition. So let's get into each one of those a little bit more. All right, so sleep. I'm starting with the most powerful lever that we have. So now I practice as a health psychologist, but in my decade of training, I actually trained as a generalist before specializing. So I've seen it all. And I can tell you that whatever someone walks into my office with, I'm talking psychosis, anger, depression, anxiety, financial struggles, even food insecurity. If sleep is also on their problem list, I always start there. And that's because sleep affects everything. It can either make everything better or it can make everything worse. So I think about what's my low hanging fruit here? What can I intervene on that can make a difference the quickest and really help all these other things that someone's going through? Sleep affects everything for attorneys as far as your decision making goes, your emotion regulation, your memory, and even your physical health. Now, my style, I don't think that fear is the way to motivate anyone. So I'm actually not going to go into the research about what sleep can do to your health. But for all of you in the room, I want you to know that good quality sleep is really what we have to rely on to make sure that legal reasoning is as sharp and great as it can be. And it's not about getting it perfect every night. It's not about getting those perfect 8 hours. And fun fact, the 8 hours is actually a myth. So we are each unique, each individual. We actually don't all need 8 hours. And I've had patients where they're stressing out because they're not getting the 8 hours, but they wake up feeling rested. They wake up feeling ready for the day. And they're relieved when I let them know that most people actually fall into the 6 to 9 hour range. So it's really about finding for you, how much sleep do you need so that the next day you wake up feeling ready to perform. And my goal is really about setting realistic goals. So you might have those days, again, survival, where you can't even get the 6 to 9 hours. But I really want to set up strategies so that you have a good baseline, so that on those days where you have to pull from that rest that consistent rest that you've had for so long, you still can keep doing the job that you're trained to do and that you need to do. So micro interventions for better sleep. These are some small shifts that can really make a big difference. So I'll talk about this first one twice in today's presentation in different ways. But the first one I want to talk about is a wind down. So a wind down is really something that helps you transition mentally from what you were doing right before to really make you hungry for and ready for sleep. This one's actually an efficiency hack. I've had so many patients tell me, I just don't have the time. I finished working at 1 in the morning and there's no way I can do a wind down routine. This routine can be 10 minutes to an hour long. It's just about mentally having that code that lets your body know we're no longer in work mode and we're shifting to sleep mode. This could be things like brushing your teeth, um, taking a warm shower, having some sleepy time tea, lowering the lights. It's really, again, you're signaling to your brain, okay, it's safe for you to turn down, and now it's time to go to bed. Taking that 10 minutes up to an hour can actually help you fall asleep and even stay asleep as the night goes on. So again, the second one I know is challenging, screen time. So screens are actually so activating that when I work with people that have fatigue, I actually will have them look at a screen to see if it'll wake them up because that's how activating that blue light can be. Now, I know having screens off at a certain amount of time, it's just not realistic for the work life that all of you may have. So something that you can do here is even invest in those. I think they're like under $20. The blue light blocking glasses, you can get them off Amazon. Again, ideally you're just away from the screens, but if that can't happen, we could think about creative ways that you can reduce the activation that that blue light is giving you by putting something on like those blue light blocking glasses. The third one is a consistent wake time. So between consistent sleep time and consistent wake time, you really want to focus on the consistent wake time. You want to focus on going to bed when sleepy, waking up as consistently as possible. This is really something that helps regulate our circadian rhythm. Now, you don't have to overhaul your whole life. I know that for many, weekends are maybe a time that you want to sleep in. I might be taking away your joy by telling you you have to wake up at the same time on a weekend. But again, I know that you all have creative minds and we can be creative here. Maybe you still wake up at that same time, but you have a slow morning. You spend some time in bed, you have pour over coffee instead of instant coffee, you take a little bit longer to make your breakfast, and you really just get the day started in a way that's not hit the ground running like Monday through Friday. A consistent wake time is so important in regulating that internal clock that if you can, I would try to do your best to wake up at the same time. And again, we can play with then what happens while you're awake. This last one is actually pretty individualized. So I get a lot of pushback. And this is not a tried and true, all of these are not one size fits all, but caffeine especially. So this has to be personalized for you. I grew up in a Middle Eastern family. My mother literally used to put sourdough bread in black tea at night as my nighttime cereal, and I would have it and then go to bed. When I was older, I was confused why caffeine didn't have the same effect on me that it seemed to have on my friends. That's all another story. But for me personally, I can have Turkish coffee at night and go right to bed. But if you're finding that you're having difficulty, especially with the going to sleep part, caffeine is really something to look into. So caffeine has about a 5 to 7 hour half-life. So a good rule of thumb is after 2 p.m., switch over to decaffeinated. You could even, if you need a transition, switch over to like matcha or green tea, which still has caffeine, then move into the decaffeinated. But if you're finding that you're getting to bed at night, you're still feeling wound up, that's an area to at least investigate and see if there are some alterations you can make. Sleep is really the unsung hero of performance, and sleep, again, especially with my attorneys, more times than not ends up on their problem list. All right, next is movement. Movement is not just about fitness, it's actually about stress metabolism. I actually practiced what I preached. And right before this talk, I was feeling some stress in my body. I did some stretching to help the stress move through. And I'm happy to report that what I preach isn't just hokey. It's tried and true. And tried it myself. I never have someone do something that I wouldn't be willing to also try myself. But I remember one of my professors starting class by telling us that if everyone followed the physical activity guidelines, that we would be out of the job. And that sounds really dramatic, and I don't think that's true. But physical activity really does help our body process cortisol, improve our mood. It can help us focus. And I'm loving all of the research coming out now. I'm sure some of you have heard about the body keeps the score, all the ways that our emotions and our feelings really live in our body. Getting our body moving is really a way to get a grasp on all of this. And I'm not talking about training for a marathon. Again, I want you to start thinking small changes, not overhauls and dopamine rushes. I'm talking a 10-minute walk between meetings, stretching while you're reviewing a case. These can actually be enough to switch your entire nervous system and put you really in a place that you're able to refocus and regain control over your time. Okay, lastly, nutrition. Another place where I'm sure we all have information overload. Every week it feels like there's a new fad diet, a new study, a new thing to try. And what I can tell you is what you eat affects how you think, how you feel, and how you focus. Now, I have a lot of attorneys in the room, so I'm going to give my legal caveat. I am not a nutritionist, and I am not here to give you any sort of rigid meal plan. Instead, I just want to prime your brain to start thinking about what you're eating as your fuel. I want you to start thinking about your food like you would any high performance vehicle that you have, the gasoline that you put in it. Now, I've put the tried and true nutrients that are linked to cognitive performance here. So we have the omega-3s, protein, B vitamins, and fiber. Again, not looking for radical overhauls here, but maybe you throw a pack of almonds in your bag, or you add a tablespoon of flaxseed to your oatmeal in the morning. Maybe on Sunday you have some time, so you boil some eggs and you meal prep for the week so that you can have that protein snack throughout the week. Or maybe you swap out your chips for roasted chickpeas. These are all things that can help stabilize our blood sugar and prevent those energy crashes that maybe we feel after lunch. And all of these things are also beneficial to our overall health and well-being. So maybe for you, you don't notice those direct impacts on your cognition and your mood as quickly. Um, all of this is also beneficial for your mood. So it's a killing two birds with one stone type of thing, type of adjustment. Okay, so that was the protocol. I want to talk a little bit about when stress becomes a signal that you might need a little bit more assistance. So again, with the rise of mental health talk in the media and online, I actually find myself destigmatizing a lot of flags and a lot of things. But part of the human experience is we have a lot of emotions, a wide range of emotions, and we experience them about a wide range of things. No single emotion is meant to send you to getting help or thinking that you are broken and need more assistance. But there's some key things to know about emotions. Emotions are meant to come and go. And regardless of what they are, anger, sadness, fear, they're meant to come and go. We experience them, we sit in them, we release them. The second thing is they're meant to be appropriate to the context of what's happening in real time. So if you're upset, maybe you've been working on a brief for 8 hours and then it didn't save. Yeah, you should probably be angry about that. The next morning, you're probably still a little bit pissed off. But if a week goes by and you're still pissed, you still can't get this brief out of your head. It's causing tension in your relationship at home. It's causing trouble at work. You're having difficulty sleeping. Now we're in a completely different territory. So when the emotions are sticky, when they're not passing through you, and they're also not present focused, again, you're thinking about that brief from a week ago, or you're having anxiety about that thing in the future. That's when I want your radar to go up a little bit more. Now, if you're like, I really don't pay attention to what I'm thinking or what I'm feeling, I'm not that in tune with my thoughts or with my feelings. The other way that we can get feedback is through our bodies. So maybe you have noticed changes in your sleep, changes in your appetite, your energy levels, or even your pain sensation. Again, all the attorneys in the room, my legal caveat, in addition to following up with a medical provider and making sure there's nothing wrong with your health, this may be a time to tune in and see what your internal check engine light is trying to tell you. Our body is incredible. We have stress response systems, we have our adrenal system, we have our fight or flight system, And we also hold on to stress and tension and emotions in our body. So if you consider yourself someone that's less skilled at noticing when those emotions are sticky or when you're overreacting or underreacting, another way you could think about this is my body giving me any signals that are worth tuning into? Remembering burnout is not failure, it's a signal, and there are certainly things that we can do about it. So support options. Again, this is not a one size fits all thing. Support comes in all sorts of ways. Here I am, I'm a psychologist. I love therapy. I'm very enthusiastic about therapy. I also know therapy is not right for everyone, and we are in a extreme provider shortage right now. So I am thrilled that there are other options for folks to get the support that they need. So therapy, again, wonderful option. There are coaching and peer groups that you may look into if you scan this QR code, and I will make sure that you all get a copy of these slides and a handout for the actual resources. They'll have some coaching and peer groups that are available. There are also so many online platforms. These came up during COVID and shortly after. What I love about the online platforms is they've really eliminated a lot of the burdens to getting care that we saw before. So transportation, time, even finances can sometimes be better accounted for in these online platforms. So maybe therapy is not your thing. Maybe try out coaching, peer support, or an online platform. Start there and see what works best for you. So to wrap up, I promised that I would leave you all with 3 tools that you can try tonight. And again, for all the overachievers in the room, AKA all of you, I am not saying to try all 3 tools tonight, but these are 3 things that you may want to pick one of that you can start implementing as early as today, as early as right now. So the first is our breath. This is called the 3 breath test. I love the breath. I worked in primary care and family medicine for a while, so I was seeing patients in their doctor's office. And what I loved about doing breathing training is you don't need any materials. Your breath is always with you. It's not something you need much training for, but the breath can have really awesome results almost immediately. So for this 3 breath reset, I want you to focus on taking long inhales through your nose and exhales through your mouth. To make sure you're breathing correctly, as you inhale, your belly should be rising, and as you exhale, your belly should be falling. So a lot of people won't realize that, like, wow, I actually have pretty shallow breathing or not breathing well at all throughout the day. Having an intentional, this can take 2 minutes. Set a timer on your phone. You might even want to put some music on in the background. Take 3 breaths to really send signals to your brain. I'm not in any danger. That email that I just received is in fact not a saber-toothed tiger that I have to outrun. And I can re-regulate my adrenal system, get back to a place of calm, move on with my day. Now, the next one I talked a little bit about with the sleep, but this is a post-work transition ritual, and this is a little bit more broad than the sleep one. This is about really having transitions between work and between personal time. I know since remote work and this post-COVID, really wonky world that we're living in, those boundaries have become a little bit harder to establish, but having an off mode really allows you to kind of disconnect. And if I haven't convinced you, it's actually more strategic than you think. So when we have one leg in both worlds, in our work world and our personal world, instead of getting the best of both worlds, we're actually getting the worst of both worlds. Our personal life becomes tainted by the work that we're trying to tend to, and our work becomes tainted by the personal event that we're distracted, we're less efficient by the personal things that we're attending to. So the strategic step here is to really try to have transitions where you're either in work mode or in play and rest mode and make those as clear as you can. Now, the third one is a Dr. Atalla original. I've actually combined two strategies that I've done time and time again with my patients and with many, many attorneys. So I've combined gratitude and intention setting. So I have a couple things to say about gratitude. I know, again, I can't see the screen, but there are probably some eye rolls here. The neural research on gratitude is actually really cool, and I'll tell you a little bit why. So there are two ways to do gratitude. We can actually start our day with a gratitude practice. So you wake up, you open your eyes, have your coffee, you think about what's one thing that I'm grateful for today. When you do gratitude in the morning, I describe this as putting your gratitude goggles on. You walk out into the world, you're having a different perspective, you're seeing different things, you're feeling good overall, gives you a little bit of a rush, a little bit of a happiness boost, and it kind of primes your day. That's if you use gratitude in the morning. If you use gratitude in the evening, this is actually really cool. What that does is it primes your brain that throughout the day, it should be scanning the environment because, oh, at night, I'm going to write something down that I'm grateful for. So as you get closer to the evening, you start being like, oh, what is it? What's one thing I can write down? What's one thing I can recall? What's one thing I can say? If you share this with someone else, even better, it creates more accountability. But if you want to put that gratitude practice towards the end of your day, this is a way to prime your brain to scan its environment throughout the day to really notice things that you are grateful for. And that can really start to kind of rewire your brain um, as this becomes more of a habit and less of something that's forced or that you're trying to do. Now, the intention, this is something that really became popular with my attorneys. What I've learned is attorneys are really, really almost allergic to feeling like they've let themselves off the hook. So if they make a mistake during the day, there's something that they regret, if there's something that they want to change, this almost becomes like this intrusive, recurring thought. From an evolutionary perspective, why we have recurring thoughts is because it's the brain's way of protecting us, of telling us, don't let that happen again. Keep that on your radar. So by setting an intention for the next day, maybe it's related to something you regret or you want to change from the previous day, that tells your brain, thank you for protecting me. I got it. I'll be on it tomorrow. It lets you again rest and let that go. If you don't want to have the intention be about something that you messed up, it can just be a way to clearly prioritize what it is that you're about to attack and get through for that day. So what I found is people that set that intention of the day, they feel a little more organized, a little less unhinged, a little less untethered. They feel like they start their day with direction and intentionality. It makes them feel less frazzled. I know the legal world, again, especially now, can feel like you're putting out all sorts of fires. So having that intention, writing it down, setting it down can really tell you, I have direction, I know where I'm going, and I'm not just blowing in the wind throughout the day. So these are three ways to really reset your stress, reclaim your time, and refocus on your mind. All right, I think I left us with some time for questions, comments, or concerns. I also have my contact information up here, and I would love to hear from all of you. Uh, yes, Leonard.
Yes, some of the people on this already know, but 6 years ago, I actually figured out that I was autistic, and I ended up getting it officially diagnosed and and going through all that stuff. And it turns out, uh, right after I got diagnosed, people were coming up to me privately and telling me what their diagnosis was. Even deputy district attorneys, if you can believe that. And what I'm glad I've been really public about it because in my generation, I'm 67. You didn't even talk about mental health; it was like taboo, and so I'm just making a comment to encourage people if they think they might have an actual mental health thing going on. get some help. There shouldn't be any stigma about it. And it took about 5 years for another attorney in the Indio courthouse to go public at well, but it's a she, and she's less than half my age. So I think it may be a generational thing. But there are some of you may have heard this story, but right after I got diagnosed, I was in a jury trial, and my wife, who was helping me with the trial, realized the district attorney was as well. So that's one thing that a lot of attorneys are, is just most people don't know about it. And that's why at these seminars, when people talk about mental health, I always want to bring that up. And thank you. I really appreciated what you were talking about as well. It was very good.
Thank you so much. We need more people speaking out. Like I said, I know a lot of therapists hate the TikTok therapy world, but again, it's not all bad. It's getting so many more people talking about mental health and wearing that badge with courage and with pride even. So thank you so much for that comment.
Is there any other questions or comments for Dr. Atalla? Well, Dr. Atalla, thank you so much. That was very helpful. That was very insightful. And you actually helped us cover one of the hardest to get MCLE requirements, which is the, mental health and competence. So I'm really glad you could be here, and I'm glad you agreed to show up. I don't know when you heard about this, probably 2 days ago.
Yep, 2 days ago. So
Okay.
thank you
So
all.
I really, really appreciate you doing this on such short notice.
Fabulous. It was great.
And I might be calling you about some attorneys. I do state bar defense, and a lot of times the defense we use is the person has a mental health issue, and we need an expert to say that with this treatment, whatever happened won't be a problem again.
I see.
And so that's what I'm focused on most of the time,
No,
because just saying the person was crazy and that happened, that's not going to get you anywhere. But, saying, yes, he's crazy, but we can fix it, so everything's going to be fine, that gets you somewhere with the state bar. Andrew Roberts, do you have a question?
no, I have a comment. I really appreciate what you said. Years ago, I was suffering from depression, and it was the stress of the practice. And your analysis and how you deal with it is exactly how I dealt with it. And, you cannot be ashamed of it, and take your time and deal with the stress, just like you said, and just change your activities and focus on what's really important, and gratitude for what you have. And, you get through that, then you get sick with cancer and then a stroke, but that's life. But I really appreciate everything you said.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Okay, let's give Dr. Atalla a round of applause by raising our hands. Everybody raise your hands.
Thank you all.
Find my hand. Where's my hand? There's my hand. There's my hand. I got my hand. Come on, raise your hands, y'all. This isn't a question. Okay, I think everybody's right. It's right next to the share button at the bottom. Oh, you don't have a share button. Okay. All right, doctor. Well, thank you very much. And I will be contacting you, and I'm sure we'll be having you talk for us again. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. So, no, we're going to do a 5-minute break, and then we're going to